Hey everybody, this is Sean with Tab Performance, and today I wanted to talk about the stainless steel end cap that comes on all of our baffles. So all of our baffles, doesn't matter if it's a zombie, one of the lured baffles, or what family, if it's a Sportster, an Indian, a V-Rod, whatever, they all come with this stainless steel end cap. So we've had a couple customers express interest in a blacked out version of this end cap. And if you've been a customer with us for a while, if you're one of our older customers, you'll know that at one point these did used to be black. So what we would do is we would just take this end cap, hit it with some high temp black paint, and then we would weld the rest of it onto the baffle. But we don't send this cap out painted black anymore because we have to remember where it's at. It's right in the center of the exhaust path, so it's exposed to a lot of carbon, high temperatures as well, and then H2O is a byproduct of combustion, so you also have a lot of moisture in there as well. That's why you see water leaking out of exhaust systems, or why it gets blown out of the back when you first start it up, so that water can sit in there. So all those conditions will eventually start to break that paint down. So over time, as this paint starts to flake off, now you're left with raw metal that's exposed to those same elements: road grime, rainwater, carbon, and high temperatures. And now you have that exposed to the raw metal, and over time that raw metal is going to start to rust. So even though that bell cap it's got some rust on it, the baffle's still functioning properly. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't it doesn't look as good when you look down inside of the exhaust. So that's why we switched to this stainless steel option, because that just holds up so much better to all those different conditions. But if we were to continue to paint that black, over time, whatever we coat this with is still exposed to those conditions. So over time, whatever we coat it with is going to be eventually flaked off in some type of way, and then we're left with that raw coating, or the raw stainless steel again. So we won't have that nice black finish. But if you want to give that blacked out look a shot, there's a couple different things you can do, which I'm going to run through here. It kind of varies in degrees of difficulty, so I'll just start with the quickest, and then I'll kind of move into more involved processes as we go. So I have the baffle outside of the muffler here. So no matter what you do, the route you take to get it done, the end result is still going to be the same. So all we're really going to do is give this end cap a good scuff, so that way the paint has a nice surface to grab onto. You can use sandpaper, Scotch-Brite pad, steel wool, whatever you want. Just give it a good scuff, wipe it down, and then we're going to hit it with some high temp grill paint. That's all we'll use. We like to use just Rust-Oleum. It's got a better adhesion from some of the other stuff that we've tried. So we're going to get this nice and scuffed, hit it with some high temp grill paint, and I'll show you the different ways that it's done depending on the route that you go. Alright, so probably the quickest way, or at least the way that requires the least amount of parts that need to be taken off, is this to spray it on the bike. So we'll take the tip off, and the tip is just held in with 2 button cap screws. I'll take a 5/32 Allen. We can take the tip off, and then we have easier access to that stainless steel end cap that we're trying to paint black. Now we'll get it masked up so we don't get any overspray on any of our paint. And I would recommend at least taking it off the bag if this is the way you're going to do it. You don't have to do that, so I'm going to show you don't need to do that, but it'll make it much easier to get it masked up to where you'll minimize that overspray. One thing I will point out, you do want to make sure you get some type of tape or paper over those holes so you don't have paint being blasted out that hole onto the muffler. Alright, so there's the majority of it masked off. I'm going to get some of this stuff covered up as well. And it doesn't have to be pretty, just make sure everything's covered. Before we hit this with any paint, we do want to make sure that we just give it a little bit of a scuff just to give the paint something to grab onto. Alright, so now we'll get this going, and again, we like to use the Rust-Oleum High Heat Black just because it has pretty good adhesion, but you can use whatever high temp paint you want. If you want a shinier finish or a duller finish, you can kind of mess around with some things. So we're going to go ahead and get this on there. Typically you get a little better adhesion and a little better finish that doesn't have any spotting or anything in there if you just stand a little bit away from it and you're not too close in there and all the paint is pooling. We'll let it dry and then we'll add another coat. Alright, after a couple coats, that's what we're looking at. So now we're going to get the tip back on, see what it looks like with the tip in place. Alright, another way to go about that is actually take the muffler off the bike. And this just allows you to get the paint in there without the chance of overspray on the bags or the tires or anything like that. So we're going to go through that process here now. And I like to remove the tip from the muffler before I take the muffler off the bike. It just makes the muffler a little bit more sturdy. And now we can get our baffle cap prepped for our paint. Coated. I'm going to make sure there's nothing around that's going to get overspray on it. And I'm starting from the inside and I'm working my way out, so that way I make sure I don't get anything past the inside, no overspray on the outside at all. And if you're really worried about overspray, you can take the baffle completely out. You don't have to do it that way, but if you want to ensure not to get any overspray at all, that's a good way to do it. Also, if you're in the process of changing out baffles, if you bought a new set of baffles from us, you can do this before you even put them in. If you decide you want to take the baffle all the way out to do this, I'll go ahead and show you how to get it out of there. So the tip off, we have the baffle bolt out. Then we can just put this up on its end like this and make sure we have something soft, like a towel or something like that. And that baffle will work its way out of there. So once you get as far as it wants to go by knocking it on its head, since this baffle ridge is just a little bit thicker than our 4" and 4½, it does like to get kind of hung up right there. What you can do, come in from the inside, is there's a little lip on the baffle, and it'll just come right out. So I'll show you what I was grabbing there. You can see at the very end there's a little lip right on that bell cap that allows you to get something on there to hit it out the rest of the way. And depending on what your coverage looks like after the first coat, you might need a couple more, so I'm going to go ahead and get this guy again. And I'm going to hit it one more time for good measure. Alright, so here's the two baffles we did. I pulled the zombie baffle out of the muffler that we sprayed while it was inside of the muffler. Pulled that one out just so we can kind of compare the two. And then I have this other one that I did outside of the muffler. So you can see on the one that was inside the muffler, it is kind of centralized at the that outlet hole right there, because we have to feather it away. So it tends to get pretty thick right there at the outlet and then thins out there. You can get a much more even coat on the baffle when it's pulled out. So just something to keep in mind. And it's not a huge deal because that's all going to get covered up with carbon anyway, so any imperfection on that is going to just get filled in. To get it back in there, we're just going to line the baffle up with the male piece on the inlet side. Once we get it lined up, we want to get our bolt hole for the baffle lined up with the bottom bolt holes. So there's one for the tip, there's one for the baffle, so you want to make sure that's lined up before it gets too tight. So again, we're just lining that up. You can tell if it's not lined up, it'll be hanging off to the side. From there, the baffle will typically just fall right in. However, sometimes when we weld on the brackets, it can pull the muffler out of round. So there's a little bit of ovality to it. So what we'll typically do if we run into that, just use a big set of clamps, squeeze those two sections together, and it'll fall right in there. So if you don't have clamps, what you can do is just use your hands, put your hands right where it's pushing out. And as you're squeezing that in, you're going to push down on the baffle. One little trick there, you want to start squeezing those bulges in before you start pushing down, because if you start pushing down and then squeezing, it's just going to get hung up on what it was getting caught on before. So make sure you start to squeeze, then push it in, it should fall right in. So again, make sure that bolt hole's lined up. If it's not, you can use a screwdriver or something to get it to where you need it to be. And then we're just going to tap that in place with the mallet down to that bottom hole there. So hopefully that process was at least somewhat helpful. But again, you have a couple different ways to do that. You can do it while it's on the bike, pull the muffler off and take the tip off and do it while the baffle's still in the muffler, or you can just take the baffle completely out and do it then. Just keep in mind, even though we have it all blacked out and everything looks good now, at some point that is going to break down and the paint's going to start to flake off. So at some point we're going to need to go back in there and touch it up again. However, if you have a bike like this that's got a proper tune on it, anything that breaks down will just be covered by that carbon buildup as well. So just some things to keep in mind and kind of our thought process on everything. But hopefully you found this helpful. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and check out our website as well.